Thank you so much. Thank you, Siddhi, for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me here. It's obviously great to be back to college after so long, especially after all of the lockdowns and everything. Always super exciting to be here. Thank you. So like Siddhi said, I'll also give you a quick introduction of myself. But to begin with, this is one picture that a senior showed me once, and that has become a cornerstone. I just wanted to share it with all of you that as you progress now, I think this is the fag end of your structured learning. After this, everything will be where you have to like work hard, figure stuff out, and keep on iterating and keep on moving forward. I think a beautiful thing that you can imbibe going forward in life is to feel free to pivot at any point in time. It doesn't matter how hard you have been working on something. If it's not working and if you know a better way to do things, if you're at any stage, be it work, be it small tasks, be it your career progression, be it bigger decisions of life, be it relationships, whatever be it, feel free to pivot at any point in time. And I think that is where the major growths in career come from. So with that, let me give you a quick background of myself. So, so at present, I'm working as a global mergers and acquisition manager at Revolut. Revolut is a fintech firm. It is based out of the UK. It's a financial super app that these people are trying to build. In terms of valuation, it is like Europe's second biggest fintech, almost 5 times the valuation of Paytm. So what these people do is, given they're such a big company, they basically go ahead and acquire smaller companies, and I'm in the team that does that. So that is what the acquisition teams do. So, okay, basically, what is mergers and acquisitions, and what do I do? So essentially, for any company, there are three ways of growing. Um, One way is where you organically build the product, people like ground up, build their startups, build the product, whatever you're doing. That is one way. Second way is partnerships. So where you maybe do not have the time or the licenses to sort of launch products, then you partner accordingly. And the third is an inorganic way of expansion. That is where you go ahead and buy the companies. So this is when maybe there is a product that is very interesting, there's a new geography in which you want to expand into, or anything that you'd want to do for which you want to shorten the timelines to go to market. That is where you go ahead and acquire smaller companies. That is what I do right now. Before of this, I was working with Morgan Stanley in their investment banking team. This was my job right out of college. So it was my first job, a very enriching experience. It's very rare that uh, at that age, like 20 to 23 of an age, you get that level of exposure. It was so what does investment banking entail and what do people do there? I'll go in depth, but basically what I got to do was work on like really big IPOs, which is when a company lists themselves on the stock market. So I worked on Zomato's IPO. Then there was this real estate company which was selling all of their assets. So they had built all of these like big buildings in Bangalore, and they wanted to sell all of them. So we did this 15,000 crore transaction for them, which was again a great experience. So I'll talk a bit about all of that, but but like a quintessential finance guy, I have put in a lot of jargons there, which I'll try and explain it to all of you in a bit. But most importantly, before of this was my Insta life, which was like the best phase of life. So it's great that you guys are living it right now. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement and apprehension about the days forward, but yeah, it's a very special time where you are at, and like keep cherishing every portion of the time here. This is actually an overview page I created. This is totally basis my understanding when I was appearing for placements. If you want, feel free to click a picture of this page, because I'll not delve into every point here, but I feel this is an important page to give you perspectives on a couple of things. I'll just pause here for a second, and please take a screenshot, a picture. Perfect. So let me just go ahead explaining the first three columns first. So I'll give you a quick background of what all are the types of companies that come to IIT Bombay for placement. Okay, I think right now you must be in your PPT season, right? I think the PPTs must have begun. All right, cool. So these are a couple of ways to sort of like bifurcate all of the companies that come in. And the idea is to at the end give you a background of what should you be focusing on, because I see a lot of people wanting to enter finance but doing things that add only incremental value, not where the major chunk of effort should be concentrated. So the first part is the investment banking private equity companies. These are typically rare when they come for placements. So typically Morgan Stanley, Blackstone, Artwood Capital were some companies that came. The idea here is that these companies essentially help their clients to raise money. In doing that, what you learn a lot about is the different kinds of businesses, different industries on a very high level fashion. So you don't understand the nitty gritties of all of it, but you basically understand things in a very high level fashion, and you get to like interact with a lot of industry leaders, understand various things, and you're essentially, this is a very finance intensive role. So when you talk about corporate finance or like balance sheets, P&L, accounting, a lot of boring math stuff, this is where all of that happens. Second is Deutsche Bank and Goldman. So these are actually two companies that actually hire a lot from Insti. If you want to enter finance, these are actually very good places to be at. What you get an understanding of, so finance is basically constructed as a front end, mid end, and back end role. With and the only difference in all of the three is the kind of role that you're doing. Front end means more of a client facing role, where you are so which is like the IBPE kind of a role, where you are actually going out to clients, meeting people, and where your major role is either core finance or essentially like selling stuff, talking to people, and those kind of things, where you are actually in a front end facing role. That is one. Then there is this back end role, which is all of this banking infrastructure. So Goldman hires for a lot of back end roles from Insti, which are wonderful ways to get an understanding of the entire financial ecosystem and how things are structured. So it's actually like, you know, transferring money, saving money, and all of that is a mammoth infrastructure on the back end. This is a very good place to start your careers to understand that. Then there is Goldman, which hires for mid office roles. These are basically roles that help front end and back end coordinate. So it is within the company setting up a lot of infrastructures, processes, helping traders. Could you keep that, please? Helping traders, and basically it's a great role. But for both of these companies, one caveat from my side is that your experience as you know, an analyst or whatever depends heavily on the kind of team that you're entering. There are some teams where you end up like just, so I'm aware of like compliance is one team within, I think, Deutsche, which does not have the best of experiences. All of these like again saying are my personal opinions basis whatever my friends there like for this talk also I spoke with a lot of people to get an understanding of how they are feeling in their roles like 2-3 years down the line. So those are some places where the best way and the best thing you could do is that when these companies come for PPT, talk to as many people as you can within the company to understand what teams they are in and how and what does their team exactly do. Because yeah, I mean, these are beautiful launch pads, but your experience can vary a lot basis the team you're in. The next are trading companies. Trading companies can be classified as the ones that require coding and ones that don't require coding. So Optiver, Flow Traders, these kind of companies just rely on quick maths. They are basically working on market making and arbitrage. What that is basically whenever you want to buy or sell a stock, there are basically, you know, you might have seen different prices when you're buying or selling. So there are these big financial institutions that provide liquidity for that, and yeah, I mean that is one kind of role. The other kind of role which has really picked up massively in the last few years is sort of these coding related trading roles, which basically are all of these companies like World Quant, Tower Research, Quad Eye, AlphaGrep. These companies have started hiring a lot from the IITs. The idea there is that they're either working on high frequency trading, where again you have to like build algorithms to trade, or they're just basically creating algorithms, and yeah, where coding is a prerequisite. So that is one. Then there are these general finance analytics companies. So a lot of times I've noticed that a lot of times people get a clarity that, okay, I want to enter finance at a very late stage. So maybe in just one semester ago, or just like, few months ago, you sort of felt that, okay, finance is a place where I might want to start my careers at. This is a beautiful kind of space to sort of enter from. So these are general analytics kind of companies that that work with a lot of financial data. So companies like Sibyl, which has the data of like credit scores of everybody, Amex, Capital One. These are some beautiful companies which do not require as much of coding. You need to like it's very possible, practically possible to structure your preparation approach in these few months and get into these companies and then incrementally build your knowledge. So yeah. And the last one is like very niche roles where there's this one-off company that might hire a derivative analyst and those kind of things. So those are some areas which are like one-off companies, and I'm not going to delve much into that. Now, coming to this prerequisite portion of things, what I have typically noticed is that when you think of finance and you thinking of like applying for finance companies, a lot of times what you start doing is reading up on finance, reading up on biographies of people in finance, or like just corporate finance and like learning about those kind of things. I feel that that is a very misdirected approach, because if you look here, the third and the fifth column are the most orange ones, where the must-haves are the darkest. The idea is that if you want to probabilistically increase your chances of getting into finance companies, and if you don't have a lot of preference as to where you ideally would want to be, these are some beautiful things that you should focus most of your efforts on, which is like stats probability and puzzles. I think everybody sort of tells this, but typically we end up paying lesser amount of attention to like probability questions, statistic questions. There are I think now we have nailed it like as people sitting for placements. I think we've nailed what are the resources that we need to do. The placement cell does wonderful stuff. I think Pariksha and all was something that was in place at our times. I'm not sure whether you have it right now, but there are these frequent tests. Keep on doing that. Those are some of the best things to be at. If at all you want to like apply for specific roles, only then go ahead and like once you're done with the must-haves, then I think it's a good time to go ahead and do the good to haves. But just because good to haves seem interesting or seem easy, don't go ahead and like try and working towards that. So with that, like this was a general overview of finance, and like in case there are any questions, in case anything comes up, feel free to raise your hand, and like I'm happy to discuss things live also. At the end also we'll have a question and answer session in case you have any doubts. But so out of all of this, investment banking is something that I have done, and like I would want to give a bit of a background into what the space is, what all I have done, and like how things are like. So investment banking is, I'd say it's a wonderful exposure to businesses top down at such an early stage of life. It's impossible to get that typically anywhere else. What happens is that as an analyst, you join this 15-16 member team, which is a close-knit team working really hard. When they say it's like, I don't know if like people have come and talked about investment banking or not, but it is like typically a 100-hour work week. And when they say it, they mean it. Like people actually work 100 hours in a week, which is like terrifying. But so I actually have a story about that. Like, in all of these companies, when you join, you will get a welcome kit with like bottles and t-shirts and those kind of things. At the day one of my journey, an associate came and threw something at me. I caught it, looked at it, and it turned out to be this central picture, a sleeping bag. And yeah, I mean, it was the most thoughtful gift, unfortunately, I received for 2 years. But yeah, I mean, the role comes with its pros and cons. Given it's such a high responsibility role, you get to meet a lot of industry leaders. The perspective towards a lot of things changes. I think the biggest change that comes is the vision as to how these people think about industries evolving. When you talk with these people, these like they are actually shaping the industries for the next 30, 40 years, and you sort of understand how do they plan the milestones, and it's just a wonderful exposure meeting people also, and within the company also understanding from your seniors as to how do they communicate with them, because it's like just a bunch of very smart people and you always feel dumbest in the room. So it was great. This was one time when I could meet. Does anybody recognize this guy? This is like Vijay Shekhar Sharma, founder of Paytm. Yes. So I got to meet him, but I got to meet him in a situation where I had to like cut short a 3-day vacation, which was the only vacation I got in a year, and come back for a meeting. But so yeah, it has its pros and cons. I'll give you a quick top-down understanding of what this field is all about. Okay. So what are IPOs and MNS? Where does banking fit in? Where does an analyst fit in? Which would be like us. And yeah, I mean, what all can you learn? How can you grow? What can you do as next steps in life? So what are IPOs and M&As? These are basically ways by which companies raise capital for themselves. I worked, so you might have heard recently tech companies have started doing a lot of IPOs. I'm guessing you might have heard Zomato went public, Paytm went public. All of those things were some things that Morgan Stanley had done. What happens is that as companies grow, they require a certain capital to facilitate their growth. And you must have heard that there are fundraising events that keep on happening. And after a certain amount of exits, the company goes public, where the kind of investor base changes. So this fundraise is very different from the previous ones in the sense of who is the investor, where typically it's these retail investors also. Because of that, there's a lot of scrutiny. So there's a lot of these people, like basically all of these companies have to declare their financials, be publicly much more scrutinized, and the SEBI, which is like the regulator, the securities regulator in India, they are much more intense in terms of the scrutiny of these companies, and hence they have to do a proper preparation for getting listed, which is where, so that is IPO. M&A is basically where one company either acquires the other one or they merge. Idea behind them is typically can be strategic. So you might have heard that Facebook, Google invested in Geo in last year. So all of those were very strategic investments where there is a benefit to both the parties, and they end up so this is where one decision changes the entire industry also, and it's actually quite a pivotal point in the company's life cycle also, and in the industry altogether. So a few years ago, Vodafone and Idea had merged. This was a pivotal point where the entire telecom industry changed its course in India. These are a couple of and that is why like M&As are very important points in company life cycle. Where does an investment bank fit in? So you are hearing, like, I have only been talking about like a company buying and a company selling, right? So what is an investment bank? They do not buy or sell. So they are not involved. They are neither the investor, they are nor the target company. What they do is they are the facilitators of this process. So in such a process, there are a lot of things to be taken care of. The biggest point, which is the pricing. So a water bottle costs X because it has an MRP to it. But how do you sort of price an entire business with a lot of tangibles, intangibles, human talent, infrastructure, IP? So there are ways to sort of go ahead and price those things. That is which is like one of the biggest roles, and which is the most interesting part for us, for like an entry level person, basically, where pricing comes in. Then there are aspects of like a lot of regulator interaction, a lot of interaction around educating investors, educating people, that comes in. So when you're buying something like that, so even when you're buying like a packet of chips, you're concerned of like the quality of the product, right? So when a person is buying a company, they're actually very apprehensive about what are you buying. If they're claiming there are 20 factories, are there actually 20 factories? So then there is this process of due diligence that goes, where again, like investment banks help with that process, where the companies are performing a due diligence on the quality of the product, like where A is buying B. These and apart from this, there is a lot of legal terms and conditions. Given it's like a mammoth set of like lawyers on both the sides, there has to be somebody who like coordinates with them and understands and brings peace in conflicts basically. So that is overall what an investment bank does. Typically, it's a team of 3 to 5 people doing all of this, and that is why it's a lot of exposure. What does an analyst do typically in this? Is you like as an analyst, we're very raw, right? We don't understand a lot of things. We don't understand, like we're very like engineering college guys or people, right? So we don't understand how to like talk, and it's just a very insane learning curve. What we do is we work a lot on the financial models initially. That is also something that's not required for you to know, but like just over time you end up reading, you end up learning, you end up doing. And corporate finance, so all of these things which relate to accounting, and like in theory, which is a very boring part in theory, which is all of the balance sheets, P&Ls, cash flow statements, and where how do you account for revenues, costs, those kind of things come in play. That is one aspect of things that an analyst focuses on. Another aspect of things is educating. So let's say you're trying to educate an investor on like investing in real estate in India. So you will do a thorough like sort of market research. You will have people and basically create presentations. So that is where the creating presentation angles comes, where you have to like create 100 pager decks, which is also something that an analyst works on. But like it is a lot of grunt work, but it's a lot of knowledge base increase for us, given like you learn a lot about businesses in that way. These are primarily the two things that you do, and the biggest thing that you bring to the table is a lot of energy. So given these are such high intense roles, and as a young person, I think the biggest value add you have to the deal team is your energy, and yeah, I mean from there you can take all of the learnings. Typically, learnings for me would be that I've been stressing on this point, and I cannot stress it enough, is the amount of vision that grows. So as us, like even though we are amongst right now, like amongst the smartest people, but everybody has a very low amount of knowledge right now. So even though you're exchanging good abstract ideas, the real knowledge that you have is very less. And this is something that bumped a lot for me in terms of the vision and learnings. So when you sort of like see, or have you sort of seen Suits? I mean that Harvey kind of a guy like is your boss. So I mean you actually feel that you are really the dumbest person in the room, and you can learn a lot about like the social skills of how to like interact, talk with people who are like so senior and so smart, which is something that we rarely have gotten a chance to do in professional settings. These are some of like the soft learnings, I'd say, which have had a more impact, I'd say. On the hard scale, yes, like I can switch back to that jargon page that I was talking of. So on the hard skills, basically you learn about a lot about corporate finance. Corporate finance is basically yeah, like I said, all about balance sheets and like technical details of accounting. That is one. Basis that, you learn a lot about valuations. So this is discounting cash flows, trading multiples. Basically, a lot of these hard skills around finance are something that you develop. You learn a lot about presenting stuff. So we are very good at analytics generally, but we're not as good at presenting as maybe a person who might have studied at a DU or something like that. These are some places where I think like we really pick up skills very quickly and very well. Potential exits. So there, you might have heard of like venture capital firms, private equities. Typically, that is one route where right now you are a middleman, right, between the investors and sellers, right? The next step is to be either one. So either you can be an investor, so you work for a private equity or a VC firm, or you be a seller. So for that you have to create a business, and then that is essentially like joining startups, which is what I did. So that is like one aspect of things. RMG acquisition, this is something, let me delve into it in case we have time at the end. Um, what So RMG acquisition was this 15,000 crore deal that I was an analyst on. A great acquisition, but I can like go into the details later on. What are some cons of working in the field? I think yeah. I mean, with high intensity and high responsibility roles, the biggest con is first is burnout. It is very real. So right now, like I understand like a lot of times there is this enthusiasm that okay, I mean it doesn't matter, I can work any amount of time required, but when you have to do that consistently over like years, it creates a certain amount of fatigue. Also, there are always like, I mean, I have a lot of interests outside of work. I'm sure a lot of you also have. So when you do not get to pursue that, there's a certain amount of opportunity cost that sort of like kicks in, where you feel that okay, there's a certain amount of opportunity cost that I am paying. So yeah, interview preparation. So I'll give you quick guidelines on both of these things, which is IB specific interview preparation and overall placements interview preparation. But before going into that, I just want to take a pause and ask in case like there are any questions that anybody wants to ask or any points to discuss. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that is more of a technical concept, and like I can explain it to you later. The idea is that you do these valuations by 3 4 techniques, and like all of those go haywire, so you sort of come to a middle ground using that. So yeah, right, right. So okay, yeah, that's a good question. So this R and data science kind of a coding so R and all are basically platforms to sort of do analysis on data science, right? You've got a lot of data, you can like use R, Python, and all of these tools to sort of slice and dice that, right? That would typically come under the general finance analytics kind of roles, where having a knowledge of that is a very good, very relevant, very good add-on. So SQL and all can really position you very well for like any kind of data science roles in startups, and and those can be any startups, like a lot of fintech. So like right now I'm learning for I'm working for Revolut. They are massively hiring for like SQL and R kind of roles, where in the finance teams, where the idea is that uh, you can work on data. So that is one aspect of things. But on the trading side of things, I think it is more about the C++ portions, where you are basically working on the latency. So you are reducing that amount of time. So yeah, those kind of things. Yeah. So basically, the first one is investment banking, private equity, where the examples of companies are Blackstone, Morgan Stanley, Upward. The idea of these companies is that they facilitate capital requirements of companies via merger acquisitions, IPOs, uh, and essentially restructure them to maximize shareholder values. Deutsche Bank and Goldman, like I said, these are like they hire for a lot of roles. Uh, they're leading banks offering mid office, back office roles. They hire for multiple roles and like good insight into banking infrastructure. The experience is highly dependent on what kind of team you're in, and like you should check that while interviewing with the company. Trading non-coding is companies like Optiver, Flow Traders, which are like liquidity providers. They do market making and arbitrage trading. These are some things that you don't need to know. You just need to be good at the prerequisites, which here is quick maths. Uh, Trading in terms in coding profiles is companies like WorldCon, Tower Research, QuadEye, AlphaGrep, IMC Trading. These are high frequency trading, algorithmic trading companies where a certain amount of coding knowledge really helps. General finance companies, which are companies like TransUnion Civil, American Express, Capital One. These companies all come with like a generalist role, various varied profiles, and typically you can learn a lot about data and initial like early entry into finance, where you're analyzing user behaviors, other data analytics onto financial data of users. And the last one is like niche roles like equities or derivatives, where I have seen Morgan Stanley hiring a couple of times from Insti and Barclays. And I mean, there the work is around like analysis of stocks, equities, or like, structuring of derivatives, which are very niche roles. And yeah, so that's about it. Cool. Any other points around things till I discussed? Otherwise, like I'll go ahead. So I'll give a quick understanding of what can you be preparing, both from an IB perspective and a general preparation perspective. From an IB, and actually first let me give this one blanket idea. I think you might have, I think you're already done with resume preparation. Is that finalized? Like, is that signed off also, verified and everything? Okay, cool. The biggest thing that you can do is like be well versed with your resume. The idea is not to like know every detail and every number and those kind of things, which is where we typically end up focusing on. The idea is to have a very strong story of whys. As to, so a lot of you I know, because I did the same, is like experimented a lot in college life, right? You might have been in very technical bodies, but interviewing for non-technical roles. You might have done nothing in the first 3 years. You might have chilled, but you are like thinking of appearing for the best company. I'd say do that. Do everything. Be as authentic as possible on your resume. So whatever you have done or not done, like don't do courses just for the sake of doing it, or whatever. Like once you have done something and you have written it down, own it up. Like the best thing that you can do in an interview is be authentic as to, okay, like, so my profile was actually very technical in the first 2 years. I was a part of racing club, and like it was very technical in terms of studies, the projects I had taken and everything. After that, I felt like I'd want to do something non-technical. I was not a part of any non-tech body in the institute, but done some work by myself. Whatever you have done or not done, just own it up in the resume and be very confident about the whys of things. That, okay, what was the point where you felt that, okay, this is the reason I should do this, this is the reason I should do this. I think that is something that really strikes a chord with the people, because they know that, all of you have that basic level of familiarity with numbers, and like you can do well in the job. Their only thought process is whether you actually want to take that job or not, and whether you will stick around. That is the only interviewer concern, or at least the biggest one. So like the best part is like knowing your resume very well, and not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the thought process at each stage. Coming back to IB specific points. So if you want to interview for investment banking, I think there it would really help if you have some sort of, like in consulting, this is spikes. I think that is important. But here a certain amount of corporate finance helps. The idea is not to be technically very strong, because you have to relearn everything once you go in. But the idea is to show genuine interest. So for IB specifically, they are very scared. Like while hiring, a lot of time and company resources go into hiring, and they are very scared that the analyst should be able to work as much as they want. So you basically, via whatever, like and like having a knowledge of the field, having a knowledge of corporate finance really goes a long way in showing that interest. So a good resource to do that is a blog called Zerodha Varsity. You might have come across it already, but if not, it's a beautiful blog, both in terms of like developing finance knowledge for this role or trading. Like that is one of the best educative blogs I've come across on the internet. They have basically a limited set of blogs. They're not after this like increasing content and posting something weekly and those kind of things. They've built a set of blogs. You read through them, and it's a very good beginner blog. So yeah, I'd encourage you to go about it. And they also, like, just on an off topic, they also have a very good personal finance section. So irrespective of you going into finance or not, personal finance is something that you will have to understand at a later point in time, that's a very good thing that you can read through. Apart from this, I think generally, like I said, puzzles, statistics probability less so, puzzles more so. For IB are some things that you should do, but what they check for is like confidence, and yeah, there is a concept of stress testing. So there was one interview where whatever I would say, they would ask me. So yeah, I mean, okay, taking a step back, for IB and for any role per se, it's very important that you know what you're interviewing for. So what is investment banking? What is the role of an analyst? These are the two most important questions, and you can translate to any industry, any job that you're interviewing at. What does the company do, and what would be your role in the company are two very quintessential questions you should have answer to. Yep. Some general interview tips and resources. Like I said, resume is king. That is one. Next would be to be confident and calm. So I know that this time gets very stressful, but whatever works your way, howsoever you can make yourself confident and calm, that is important. For puzzles, there is this website called Brainsteller. There are a lot of placement. The placement cell at IIT Bombay gives a lot of material on puzzles and I think statistics probabilities. Right? You have. Do you still have those pariksha exams? No. So do you have any recurring exams that the placement cell has? Okay. Those are typically very good. They're very relevant. So you can go ahead and do that. Apart from this, just give me a second. I think I had noted something now. Yeah, for quick maths, there's this website called Arithmetic ZMac. That's a quick. That is for all like trading roles especially, but for non-trading roles also, it would really help to sort of quicken your mathematics calculations, and yeah, those are some broad points. Sorry, go ahead. Quick maths. Yeah. So there, let me write this down. So this is a website for like quick maths. You could use it for like practicing. So another generally for finance, a good thing to do is be aware of what is the latest financial news, like whatever is happening in industry. And I know that it's a very big hurdle to cross because it's like everything is going haywire in this world right now. But what you could do is start listening to podcasts, because given we do not have a point of view, it really helps to listen to somebody else's point of view and develop your understanding further. Money Control is a very good podcast, so you could like view their like listen in on their podcast while like traveling or anything like that. That is very helpful. And cat books. So I think irrespective of whether you're like preparing for cat or not, those are some really good resources. They're actually higher a notch higher than what is asked in placement tests, so you might not go in as much depth, but all of these books by time and those kind of things are very helpful. You can get like free PDFs, like in Insta you can source all of that. So those are some good things. Any general questions around placements and preparation that you might have at this point of time? Yeah, absolutely. So the question is around stress test interviews and what are that. So the idea is that for a lot of actually this is very prevalent in finance. A lot of times what happens is that you have to be working in stressful environments and all. So I mean, these people want to just check how do you respond and how do you perform under pressure. A very standard way of doing it is that they ask you questions around what is the role, what value do you bring to the table, or like any question, and they'll just keep on negating that okay, this is nonsense, this is bullshit, this is definitely not what we are hiring for, so you're not prepared, and they'll just create pressure on you. They'll ask very quick maths questions. They'll ask like cube root of 100, whatever. Like they'll just ask a lot of questions where the aim is not to check whether you answered right or whether you answered correctly or quickly. The aim is to see how confidently you were able to come to the next question. I think like one of the best ways to handle it is to be aware that okay, this happens, and just be happy that okay, if they're stress testing me, I'm a good candidate. Like yeah, that's one of the best things you can do.
We do have to respond something like they are saying like whatever you say.
Feel confident in what you are saying. In case you're not sure totally, actually, in case you're actually not sure whether you were correct or not, then keep asking them that okay, I mean like I'm interested in learning, so you tell me what it is, and then let's figure out if it is of interest to me, or whatever. Like you can just keep on continuing the conversation. Don't get scared and sit down. Is the only thing to not do at that point in time. So yeah, but like I figured the easiest way to like deal with stress test is to be aware that okay, this happens, and in case that it's happening with me, that means I'm doing well, and yeah, I mean you can just keep on interacting with the interviewer. It's totally okay to take few minutes in an interview, so you don't need to be. It's not required that you reply very quickly, and that's across the board. Like any kind of company that you're interviewing for, it's not necessary that you sort of you're very quick with responses. You can take your 1 minute, structure your thoughts, and then convey to them with confidence. I think that is something that comes across very well. Anybody else? All right. So I mean the reason I did not touch it is because you've already submitted resumes. They're all verified, right? But okay, just to like give you a quick understanding of what it means is that a lot of times what these companies are looking for is excellence onto something. So it doesn't need to be their company relevant stuff, but it needs to be. But they want to see is that when you pick up something, how well do you do it? So that can be that can be sports, that could be your academics, that could be like for some people it is like all of your Olympiads right through your childhood. So a lot of times it is confused by judging it with raw intelligence. I think that is wrong. For any job that you go outside of this university, you all have like IQ and analytical skills enough to be able to ace it. Like in the real world, the real problems are not math and they're not about IQ. And I think every interviewer is aware of it. So they're not checking for that. What they're checking for is how well you do stuff when you pick something up. So that could be how well you did in your academics. That could be that okay, like you just totally maybe you did not do academics as much, but you did something else then. It might be sports, it might be different clubs that you were in. Sometimes they check for endurance, so all of these things like come in handy. Like I think I had completed swimathon, so that was something of very of a heavy interest for investment banking. They were happy that okay, you have a certain amount of endurance. So I mean it depends a lot on the kind of company that you're interviewing for, but I think it's more about judging what excellence you achieved in something that you picked up. Okay, I'll come to this after the session then, in case there are any other questions. Then coming to this point where like this is a point where I want to touch, which is not as much about finance as much about, but it is about life, which is that at this point of time, I think a lot of times what we feel is that okay, is this the few months and is this the point for which all of the struggle was, and like be it all of the preparation that you did during your JE days, during your IIT days, your college days, and like whatever, and in case you mess it up, are you messed up for life? That is, I think, the biggest source of pressure also, and I think there can be and like at this point of time, you're rightly like it's very fair to believe so, but you cannot be as far away from truth as possible. It is totally like, while it's a good starting point of where you begin and what you do, it's a totally open level playing field outside. Which brings me to the question of then what really matters. So if it is not placements, what is this all about? And I think I think for everything. So in placements, one of the biggest concerns is that it's a zero sum game. Like if somebody is getting into a company, you are not, and like they'll do better and you will not. But oh, a few years down the line, what you will realize is that the best of opportunities are not some things that come out of a LinkedIn, uh, you know, job application. It'll be something that you understand from some of your friends working in some of the companies. All of your jobs, like I have never come across anybody who changed companies, their second job or anything like that by approaching somebody like ground up. It was always through a referral. It was always about getting to know an opportunity from somebody else. And like this is a very algorithmic way of putting it, that it's not a zero sum game. A couple of examples from my journey also is that this job at Revolut, it's a UK based company, it's a remote role. All my colleagues and everybody is based out of London or Spain or Portugal or whatever. I got to know of this company via a colleague of mine, so she was a colleague and a senior at IIT who went to this company. I got to know about it, and that's how I got in. Another example is that, so because this is a remote company, I spent around 2 months in Dubai working out of there. The reason I could do it was that I had a friend from IIT who got a job there. He was working there, and all I could do, like I could easily crash at his place, right? So both in terms of like that is something that I was doing well in my life, he was doing well in his life, but just because of these, like the bond that we had and the relation that we had, it enhances the experiences of both our lives, right? And I think that is the biggest takeaway that you need to be aware of, that while it is tough and while you feel that every person is for themselves right now, it is very important that you help as many people as you can and like sort of develop real bonds, because it enhances both your hard aspects of life, like me getting a professional job opportunity, and soft aspects of life, like me doing this, me ending up in any city and you have friends there and you have people. It becomes really tough as you progress in life to get this concentrated set of relevant people, and I think that is something that really defines it. uh, another real value of IIT Bombay is the freedom it gives you. So it's always a debate whether IIT is a bubble or not. For us it works well, right? As long as people believe that we are intelligent, beautiful, I'm happy about it. So the idea is that it gives you a lot of freedom, because you never have to again prove your worth from an IQ point of view. It's a very liberating experience as you move ahead in life. You might not feel it right now, and like a lot of things are some things that you absolutely not understand right now, because right now we are struggling. Like between all of the smartest people, you feel the struggle to prove that are you the smart one or not. But as soon as you move out of this place, it becomes a given in the society. One thing that this helps is to do a lot of, like, it increases your risk appetite a lot. So actually, after my Morgan Stanley stint, I actually took a 6 to 8 month sabbatical, where, like, given all of these burnout points and a lot of thoughts on like what I would want to do next, I actually decided to not take a job, and I traveled for like 3 4 months. I traveled. I worked on this non-profit initiative that Siddhi was talking of. I worked on that. Those were everything. Like it was a beautiful phase of exploration of what I would want to do in life and next steps. And after that, I got into a job with, I think, more than 100% pay increase than what my previous job was giving. All of this is possible because you have this freedom that this place has given you. And I think it would be unfair if you do not exploit that freedom. So, like, it would be very important that you keep this one thing clear, that it's totally okay to keep messing up as many times as you might want, but just own it up, be confident, and move to the next step, which ties to the first picture that I showed you, that whenever you feel stuck, just be very okay reinventing and be very okay pivoting as you go forward. Which brings to my last, actually, yeah, these are three like if there are any takeaways that you might want to take, it should be these three. I'll just take a pause on this. Something that I strongly believe in, and yeah, I mean the better you can connect with people, I think the better life becomes going forward. And I think that is why I'd want to end my talk at this slide, which are some of my excerpts from my college life. And I think yes, the aim is that over time this will not just be college, this will be people from other phases of life and other instances. And I think, yeah, what is most important is for each one of us to build this slide as beautifully as possible for ourselves. So yeah, that is about it. Thank you. Thank you so much, and I'll be very happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. All right. So the question is, what are investment banking private equity case study rounds, and how are they different from consulting case study rounds? I think they're very similar in theory. So in concept, they're very similar. The idea is that you have a business case, you need to understand the key levers, ask the right questions, and the only difference being that these are number intensive. So in consulting, the numbers would be like, it would be very round numbers and very easy numbers to calculate with, because they want to like just look at the thought process. These people are very hard with numbers. So I think that's yeah, yeah, yeah. It is not a take home case. No, it is an iterative case where you sort of like discuss. Yeah, but the preparation essentially remains the same. There's nothing, no change that you can do in preparation. How do they earn money from the market? Okay, so there is this concept. So there are two things that they primarily do, from what I understand. I also have a limited understanding, but that is market making, which is like whenever you buy and sell, there is an exchange on which you are doing that, and there is a certain amount. Like if you're buying, somebody on the other side has to sell. So for every transaction, there has to be a counterparty, which is essentially providing liquidity to the stock markets. When we say that at any point of time we can make a trade, there is a certain amount of liquidity providing bit that these people do. And then there is a difference in the buy and sell price. How they quote it, how they quote their prices, essentially determines a lot of liquidity, and it determines like the delta, and hence their profits. The other is arbitrage trading. So I'm not really aware of arbitrage trading, but the idea there is that there are these different markets, different exchanges on which the your equities and everything is trading. So I mean, I think they'll exploit that somehow. Arbitrage. The idea of arbitrage is exploitation, where something is available for X at one place, X to the other, and you like buy and sell accordingly. Yeah. What is my interest in finance? Okay. I think uh, the biggest thing is, so I was a part of like racing club at IIT, where I was working on the gearbox. So I had designed and manufactured it entire gearbox, and it was a beautiful experience at the time. But what I realized was that it was very probabilistically that I got placed there. I could have very well been in aerodynamics. It was just somebody else deciding things for me, which I didn't want in the grand scheme of things. Working in finance, you have an understanding of top down how things are growing. Like for investment banking, for me, basically, more than finance, it was businesses that were of interest, where you basically can understand like a couple of industries, a couple of thought process on how businesses are being built on a very top down fashion, and then for yourself take the call of where you might want to go ground up, if that answers. So yeah, sorry. No, I think that was in third year, where like for as in the second year I was working on all of this. I think in third year, at some point of time, realized that I want to build a top-down understanding, and it did not triangulate to finance immediately. It was more about learning about startups, businesses, and reading much more. And I think I was totally open to being into consulting or banking during placements, because both provided that opportunity of learning about businesses top down. By happenstance, I ended up at Morgan Stanley, which served the purpose. That is how the next step came in. which was like this startup where again I was in their team doing acquisitions. And actually, I am right now moving to the team, to the strategy and operations team, which will not be finance. So going forward, I will take a pivot from finance into building fintech ground up, because I've realized that okay, fintech is probably a space where I might want to be in. So yeah, like yeah, go ahead.
You worked in Indian division and also in investment banking.
Correct.
How is it the same as the investment banking that happens in New York or?
Totally, totally, absolutely. I think there is no difference apart from the market that you're in. And in India, it's sector agnostic. So in the US, given there are a lot more, the market is much more evolved. There are a lot of bigger companies. It's very sector specific. So you're hired in one sector. In India, you are hired, like I worked on uh, pharmaceuticals also, real estate also, tech also. These kind of combinations are not possible outside. Anyways, I think if there are any other questions, I'm here. I'm sticking around for a while. Feel free to like come and chat. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody.